Hello and welcome, my dear friend. You've arrived here not by chance, but through something deeper. Something calling you back to your center. And right now, you're at a stage where your time is far too valuable to waste on arguing with someone who's chosen illusion over truth. Some people carry a storm within them, not a natural one, but a storm constructed from denial, blame shifting, and emotional disconnection. And if you've ever tried to love or reason with someone like that, you already know how exhausting it is. They don't just distort the truth. They rearrange your reality until you no longer trust it. They don't just deflect blame. They plant it in your hands and step away, watching you question how it got there. This isn't simply difficult behavior. This is a distortion field. One that confuses, depletes, and keeps you from the clarity you already carry within. So why do so many deeply kind, compassionate souls, like you, find themselves in relationships with those who can't take responsibility? Because you believe in healing. Because you hope that love can reach people where logic fails. Because your heart doesn't give up at the first sign of pain. But here's the twist. Narcissistic patterns don't respond to love, they feed off it. They don't soften when you offer kindness. They adjust their tactics. They sharpen their tools. And they often leave you wondering, was I the one who made this worse? Let's be clear. That doubt doesn't come from truth. It comes from manipulation. It's the residue of being tangled in someone else's refusal to face themselves. You might have had moments where you stood up, calmly and clearly, expecting growth. Instead, you were met with sarcasm, with dismissals, with dramatic stories that re-centered them as the victim. Suddenly, you're not discussing their betrayal. You're defending yourself from accusations you didn't expect. They reframe the situation until you become the aggressor, the problem, the one who's too much. So how do you respond? Do you keep trying to explain yourself, hoping this time they'll understand? Do you dig deeper, thinking clarity will eventually win? My dear friend, clarity doesn't grow in poisoned soil. You can plant all the truth you want, but it will not take root where someone is committed to staying blind. And that's the hardest truth of all. Not that they can't change, but that they won't. Because for them, change would mean taking off a mask they've worn so long, they've convinced even themselves that it's their real face. Have you noticed how when you step back, the chaos quiets, but the guilt creeps in? That's not your guilt. That's the silence revealing what was never yours to carry. Sometimes the noise was just covering the truth, that your peace had been leaking through every crack in their denial. And here's what's rarely said. You are allowed to stop trying to fix what you've already realized is broken beyond repair. This is beyond your role, and that's where discernment steps in. You're not just called to love others. You're called to protect the heart that was placed inside you. Let me ask you, have you ever wondered why you feel more peace around certain people, even in silence, than you do around others, even when everything seems calm? That's your spirit recognizing alignment. When someone refuses to take accountability, they break the agreement that relationships require, a mutual commitment to truth. Without that, you're not in a relationship, you're in a performance, a scripted play where you keep rewriting your lines, hoping the ending changes. But the script was never yours to begin with. And now that you've seen the pattern for what it is, you're already stepping into something rare, clarity without conflict. That's not a common place to stand, but it's a powerful one. Because clarity, true clarity, doesn't come from getting louder or proving your side. It comes from stepping back far enough to see the shape of the illusion. You begin to see how their words are crafted not to communicate, but to confuse. how their apologies come not from remorse, but from necessity, to keep you from walking away, to reel you back in just enough to prolong the chaos. And every time you give them the benefit of the doubt, they weaponize your grace. But this isn't about bitterness. It's about recognition. It's about realizing that sometimes the most courageous act isn't confrontation. It's conservation, saving your energy, guarding your peace, preserving the sacred space within you that was never meant to be tossed around in cycles of emotional debris. You weren't born to live in a storm disguised as a relationship. Some people won't understand your silence, your boundaries, your decision to disengage. That's okay. They don't have to understand. They don't live with the weight you've carried. The weight of being perpetually misunderstood, gaslit, or blamed for someone else's refusal to look inward. You do not owe them your peace as proof of your love. You do not owe them your exhaustion to prove your compassion. Let that sink in. If they cared about truth, they'd seek it. If they respected your perspective, they'd pause. But the pattern has shown itself. It's not changing because of one more conversation. It's not shifting because you found better words. Because the problem was never your clarity. It was their refusal to receive it. What if you were never meant to convince them? What if your role was never to change them, but to rise anyway? Because sometimes the universe doesn't clear the storm. It clears your path out of it. And that path doesn't look like victory in their eyes. It looks like distance, like quiet, like peace that doesn't beg to be understood. And to them, that's a threat. Because your peace removes the fuel they once thrived on, your attention. But when you stop feeding the fire, it dies out. And in that silence, you rediscover the most important voice of all, the one inside you, the one that always knew something wasn't right, the one that got quieter every time you were blamed for problems you didn't cause, the one that whispered, "You deserve better," even when you weren't ready to believe it. That voice is rising now, and with it comes something no narcissist can mimic, distort, or destroy: self-honesty. The deep, soul-grounded realization that you were never broken, just burdened. And now, you're not only allowed to let go, you're being called back to your inner sanctuary, called to guard what's holy in you, called to stop throwing your pearls into pits that only trample them. You're not abandoning anyone, you're realigning. Because sometimes, what feels like walking away is actually walking home. Home to your peace, home to your truth, home to a truth that says, you don't have to prove your worth to be loved. Let others call it weakness. You know it's strength. The kind of strength that knows when to speak and when to step aside. The kind of strength that doesn't waste itself proving a point that won't be heard. The kind of strength that has faced emotional warfare and chosen wisdom over war. And now, slowly, you're beginning to glow again. Not because that storm ended, but because you stopped standing in the rain hoping someone would hand you an umbrella. You built your own shelter. So, as you move forward, don't expect applause. Expect resistance. But let their silence, their spinning stories, their confusion be confirmation, not of who you are, but of who you've outgrown. And while they scramble to keep you in the cycle, you're already walking in a straighter, clearer line, one that leads you back to your own true center. And that's the true beginning. A life where your boundaries are seen as sacred, where your energy isn't spent explaining what you already know is true, where you no longer mistake emotional labor for love, where you can sit in stillness and hear nothing but peace. My dear friend, it's not your job to dismantle someone's delusion. And the moment you stopped explaining yourself to someone who never intended to understand you, you stepped into freedom. That's where you are now. Whether you realize it or not, you've already started walking. And the farther you go, the clearer it gets. Let this message be your mirror, not showing you what they fail to see, but what you've been all along, worthy, wise, and no longer available for emotional chaos. And if this message spoke to your spirit, let it remind you. Your peace isn't a prize to be earned. It's a promise that's already yours to claim. Thank you so much for taking this journey with me. If this message resonated, please like, share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe to stay connected. Continue your awakening journey by choosing one of the videos on your screen that resonates with you the most. See you there.